What's going on? It's another episode of the WVSports.com podcast. I am Wesley Shoemaker, joined as always by the one and only Keenan Cummings. On today's episode, we are going to get into some more transfer portal news with football, but more importantly right now is the play of the West Virginia men's basketball team. The Mountaineers got their fourth ranked win of the year as they knocked off number 2 Iowa State 64-57 on what was a pretty unforgettable day at the WVU Coliseum, honoring Jerry West, wearing the throwback uniforms, which were a sweet look and sharp. And then they get the big win for what goes a long way come March, but goes an even longer way right now. This was a tough stretch, Keenan. We knew coming into the week. We said they might go 0-2, and that's okay. And we said best case scenario is 1-1, and that's what they did. They battled with Houston on Wednesday, but this was different the way this thing took place.
Yeah, I want to go back to Houston just real quick. I was really impressed with West Virginia in that game. They had multiple times where they could have rolled over and quit, and they kept battling back. I think Houston is a team full of grown men, quite literally. I think their entire roster is like 26 years old. But Cryer was on the Baylor national championship team, for example, but I was impressed. The refs really kind of let Houston get away with a bunch of grabbing, holding, but West Virginia kept battling back. And I think that's really, in a way, encompasses the way this team has been all year. They find ways to battle. That they really, there's a few times, they've kind of been overwhelmed, but they've been close in games. They continue to respond. And I did want to mention that before we jump in Iowa State, because that game showed me a lot. West Virginia had every reason to kind of, pack that thing up, and
especially coming off the altitude in Colorado, it's a tough spot.
We've gone through no excuses, I guess. We'll follow the basketball team's lead, but I was impressed with that. I really was. I know it ended up being a 16-point loss, but
it was a 3-point game there in the second half.
Yeah, Houston is tough, and they don't lose there. So I did want to mention that, but most importantly, West Virginia, another resume-building win. I would be hard-pressed to find a team in the country right now that has 4 better wins than West Virginia to themselves. I mean, it's insane. They have 2 wins over Gonzaga and Arizona.
Auburn, and that's it, right?
Maybe. I mean, but they have 2 wins over Gonzaga and Arizona on a neutral side. They beat Kansas at Kansas, and now you beat number 2 Iowa State. And Iowa State was coming to this game with a lot of momentum. They had just really taken care of Kansas a couple days before, and West Virginia, this was a really, really fun game to watch, and on a lot of different levels. I think I enjoyed this game probably more than any game that I've watched in the last several years. I think that it was an old school, had like a 2009, 2008 Big East feel to it. The refs, they let the game go. It was a really physical game. Both teams were working so hard on the defensive end. Everything felt earned in this game. Every basket was earned, and I was really impressed with Iowa State defensively. I think they're just as good as advertised. West Virginia didn't back down. They brought their own level of intensity on defense, and I think that's been trademark of this team all year. But this was a fun game to watch. I definitely could do this a couple more times if it's called this way. I think that they let things go. It was physical. But Javon Small, man, what more can you say about the guy? I mean, He scored 12 of the last 13 points. Didn't even know it after the game, and I think that's the impressive part about him. And Darren DeVries, he says it all the time that, all he cares about is winning, but he shows it in his actions. People were asking about Big 12 Player of the Year in post game. He didn't want to hear any of that. He was just talking about winning and what they need to do to win. And the guy scored 27 points, filled the stat sheet again. It's 7 rebounds.
And he didn't score his first basket until there were about 7 minutes and change left to play in the first half. So it's not like he was scoring early and often. It took a while for him to really get going because Iowa State was shutting him down early.
Yeah, and West Virginia tried to get him off the ball early in the game, and they got him some looks, but it was tough. And then late in the game, he when it mattered, he had the ball in his hand and he made plays. I think there were several possessions in a row where it was kind of, hey, here, Javon Small, do what you do best. And he would either get to the rim, get to the foul line. He had a big 3, really changed the game. But this was another team effort. I know Javon's going to get his credit, and he deserves that. But Amani Hansberry hit some big shots in this game. Jonathan Powell hit a major shot to push West Virginia ahead in the second half, and up and down the board. I did not have Eduardo Andre having a full court steal and finish
and
won.
and then make the free throw.
Yeah, I did not have that on my bingo card. So I think that this was a total team effort again, and this West Virginia team just keeps impressing. I think we've documented this. I was high on this team, higher than most coming into the year. I think I said 18 wins, I think is what I said.
Ballpark, yeah.
Yeah, this is smashed any expectations that I had. I mean, this is just an incredible job. Darian DeVries has been a masterclass with his coaching this season. I mean, really what he's been able to get out of this team, without Tucker after 8 games, some other injuries that have kept guys in and out of the lineup. Jaden Stone, we haven't even seen him on the floor, and they keep finding ways to win, and they do it in a variety of ways. They were going to limit Iowa State, kind of make them play one-on-one, and the ball pressure, they just kept disrupting their offense. You could tell that, it boiled down really, and, Iowa State was able to get into the paint and make some shots, but I think West Virginia was comfortable giving that up, just not letting them play the kind of cohesive team basketball that's made this Iowa State team so special. So massive win for West Virginia for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah, I mean, those two guys you talked about, Javon Small, I mean, I know he doesn't want to talk about it, but we can talk about it. He should absolutely be in the conversation, or possibly the front.
He's the front runner
for Big 12 Player of the Year.
There's nobody in the league.
And the fact that he was slided off that midseason Wooden Award watch list.
How?
I don't know. And add in the fact, Keenan, like he's doing things that just, it doesn't make sense. He's doing it on the defensive end, on the offensive end. And it's not like he's scoring 27 points because he's shooting a million times. Like, he was 9 of 16 from the field yesterday, and it was just clutch late. Like, this game was tied with 2:30 to go. And then with 40 seconds left, it was a 8-point lead for West Virginia, solely because of the play of Javon Small. And you talk about it, the other contributors. I mean, Joe Yusufu, like, he came up clutch with a couple big buckets there late. And Eduardo Andre, especially on defense, like, he gets steals for a big man at a very high rate, which he's very active. And I think after Kansas, there might have been some feeling like, oh, this team got a little lucky there, or there might have been this level of flukeness just with the way how they had Tucker earlier for the couple wins. Like, this team is not a fluke, and I think that's the biggest thing to recognize as well, because their formula and recipe for winning is playing hard on defense and then letting Javon Small run the offense. And as long as you have those two things, which right now they do, it seems like they can go toe-to-toe with almost anyone that they want. Yes, you're going to lose some games. Yes, some matchups in this league are hard. But that win is a statement win. And as much as we talked about how hard the month of January was going to be for this team, Keenan, you get a home game versus Arizona State, who's struggling. Then you get to go on the road to Kansas State, and then you get a home game versus Houston. Like, there's some wins possibly lining up here on the schedule, and you're at 4-4 in quad one games. At some point, Keenan, and I know we briefly mentioned this, if you get a couple more of these wins, it's starting to be, we can't deny you from the NCAA tournament territory of a resume for West Virginia.
Hell, at this point, West Virginia's in contention for the Big 12 championship.
Yeah.
Who expected that? I mean, I know there's a lot of games left. There's 14 games left at this point, but yeah, this team's 4-2, and they've gone through really the meat of the schedule. Now, this league's a grind. Nobody's sitting here saying it's not. They're probably going to lose some games they shouldn't lose, but the impressive thing to me, and this has been the formula all season, is the way that they're able to bounce back. Either big wins, disappointing losses, frustrating performances, they find a way to bounce back. And I think that's going to be tested this week. We can look ahead of the schedule. That's what we're paid to do. But Arizona State at home, and then a road trip to Kansas State, which they're really struggling this year under Jerome Tang. Those, you look at those on paper, that's 2 easy wins, but
it's never easy.
It's not easy. I think that how this team responds in the next 2 games is going to be even more telling than what they were able to do this past week. They need to win game. You got to win the games at home. That's just, you already dropped 1 to Arizona, and Arizona's no joke. They're playing really good basketball right now. I know they lost yesterday to Texas Tech, but they're playing very good basketball. So there's no shame in that. But you got to beat Arizona State. That's a game you got to get at home, and then on the road, I don't care who you're playing. You saw against Colorado, they're 0-6, but they were well within puncher's range to knock off West Virginia in that game. So it's a week that's going to be really important for West Virginia because yes, they're the talk. It's almost crazy that they've knocked off 3 top 10 teams already this year, but another day where West Virginia was kind of the talk of college basketball, but That's not going to matter much if you go out and have some flat performances this week. So I think that how this team has responded is usually a pretty good indicator of what you're going to see in the future. So I expect they're going to play well. I thought it was telling. Javon Small kind of shifted the conversation and said, this doesn't matter if we don't go out and we're not ready for Arizona State. So I think that that's the attitude you want. I'm impressed with how DeVries has been able to move things forward. There's not a lot of, celebrating and we did this, we did that. It's what's next. And that's what I've been impressed with this team the most. Out of all the things that have happened this year, just how they're able to move forward.
I know, and I think glancing ahead, Keenan, these are West Virginia's remaining home games. Arizona State, Houston, Utah, BYU, Cincinnati, TCU, UCF. Theoretically, you probably shouldn't lose more than one of those, right? Like if all things created equal, you probably shouldn't lose more than one of those. And so if you get there, like if you win most of those, you're in a really good spot. And I mean, this team, Keenan, too. I mean, what have we talked about all in the last couple of years of this basketball team is their struggles on the road. This team likes going on the road. I mean, I know they lost at Houston by 16, but they played well. They handled that environment. They beat Colorado on the road. They beat Kansas on the road. So there's not something that this team hasn't proven that they can do yet. And they have a recipe for winning. And I think that's kind of the most important thing because they know what they need to do. It's not like they try and do something that they're not. They try and stick to what they're good at. And I think that's the hardest thing when you're having to adjust on a night-to-night basis to all these different teams in this league is sticking to what you're good at while also adjusting to them. And, I mean, it goes to Darren DeVries. National Coach of the Year should be calling his name if this continues because this is incredible. And I think it's probably just a sigh of nice and refreshing air for Mountaineer fans who last year was such a crapshoot to just have this finally in year one under DeVries.
Yeah, credit to him and his entire coaching staff. I've used the word masterful a lot, and it really has been. I've been absolutely blown away, and I was high on the DeVries hire when they hired him. I really like his brand of basketball, but seeing what he's done this year, and this is not a deep basketball team, and they have to work around foul trouble. They've had to work around injuries. They've had to work around a lot of things, and they keep getting it done. I think realistically with their resume right now, if they just get 5 more wins, they're in the tournament for sure. Right? 18 wins get them in the tournament. I think that's shooting low, given what they've shown so far. But of course, we see this at times that, teams will get hot and then teams will go through difficult stretches. So you got to hope kind of to maintain your level of play moving forward. But as we mentioned before, that's not been a problem so far. So I think that when you look at what's ahead and, the rear view is kind of a lot of the pitfalls that you saw. I know that you got Houston coming to Morgantown, but there's some winnable games. And I think that West Virginia is going to position themselves pretty well if they continue to play like they are right now.
Yeah, and I mean, just looking at KenPom right now, I know before West Virginia got into conference play, they projected them to have 18 total wins and go, I believe, 9-11 in Big 12 play. They have West Virginia at 21-10 projected record and 12-8 in conference play.
That's National Coach of the Year type stuff.
Yeah, like that. I know they weren't supposed to. I know KenPom didn't have them winning the Iowa State game or the Kansas game, and I think the Colorado game was a toss-up. So, like, they're winning games that the computers don't even think they should win, Keenan, and the computers seem to be running this. But they're back into the top 30 in the net. That's the place you want to be. Once you kind of get into that top 30, 35, like you are a solid, legitimate contender to make the tournament. But, I mean, at this rate, they're not even going to have to worry and sweat out March if they keep up what they're doing, truthfully. So I'm excited to see what this team can do. I mean, if you're a fan, you probably pray that they get healthy. It seems unlikely as the days go by without both DeVries and Stone. But, I mean, they're getting it done. And they have a lot of youth, and that's exciting as well, is that they're doing this with a lot of youth on the floor. It's good to see KJ Tenner back. He's obviously still getting his feet underneath. And then Amani Hansberry, I think, would be kind of it's hard not to talk about him. What he did against that Houston game first, where he just came off the bench and just lit it up after he was in some serious foul trouble in the first half. The biggest challenge I think for this team going forward is keeping him and Andre out of foul trouble. Because if you can do that, you can kind of match up the way you want to if you're DeVries. And they are just so different in their games that it can cause problems for opponents of, oh, you think you have this one figured out? Well, here's the other one. You think you have him figured out? Here's the other one. So, I mean, he scored 9 huge points in the first half. He was spotting up from 3 and making them. And when you can have that differentiation between him and Andre, that just adds another layer to this basketball team.
Yeah, and I think the thing that you mentioned, they're so different. And Hansberry's hitting his shots now. You can tell he looks healthier. DeVries mentioned that in his post-game interview. He's getting back to himself, kind of that guy that was playing in the Bahamas when he looked like a difference maker. He's a different element. I don't want to throw him in that category, but it kind of reminds me of Kevin Jones, like not rebounding, but in terms of what he can do offensively, he can really spread the floor. And then Andre doesn't get enough credit, man. Since he was inserted into the starting lineup, he has been a difference maker for West Virginia. Now, it hasn't been every game, but he's been pretty consistent with what he's able to do. He's so active defensively, and that's a guy that I liked when West Virginia added, just based off some of the numbers he had done before, and he's really kind of even exceeded my expectations. I really like what he brings to the table. He plays so hard, and I think that's what you're seeing. And the most impressive thing, kind of going back to the whole roster formation, is a lot of these guys are playing roles that they didn't think they would play at the start of the season. And it really speaks to what DeVries said about that next man up, step in. It's cliche, but you're seeing it play out in real time. And these guys are taking what little roles they had to start and have turned into massive pieces of this team, like Yesufu, Powell, go down the list. Sincere Harris has been really important. Toby Okani does not get enough respect.
He feels like he kind of gets lost in the shuffle sometimes because all the focus is on small, all the focus is on the two bigs and how they're playing. But Okani plays so many minutes and he just does his role to perfection. He helps facilitate offense. He helps create space. He's able to have the ball in his hands at times. He's a hard matchup on defense because he can switch to other positions. So his play is something that should not go unnoticed because it has been crucial for this team.
Yeah, he was second on the team yesterday in the plus minus, and I think he only scored 4 or 5 points. And I think that he had to play a big role in defense too. Probably State was using a lot of bigs, and he was outsized, but he held his own. And I think he's just that glue guy for this team. He's probably not gonna score 30 points, or rack up a big bunch of point totals nightly, but it's all the other things he does that's so important, and just speaks again to the way that.
And he's consistent too. It's not like he's giving you one great performance. Like he's pretty consistent with his play, and I think that's important too.
Yeah, and it just speaks to what DeVries talked about in the offseason about putting this roster together, making sure it worked together, finding the right guys to handle certain roles. And you're seeing it. I mean, it's exactly what he spoke about. Guys are stepping up and playing really important roles that maybe they didn't think they'd play. And I think that just speaks to the buy-in, and the effort that you're getting out of this team. He's tapping everything he can out of them. And the results are hard to argue with.
Moving on, let's kind of shift the focus a little bit to the football front. The transfer portal has continued to portal. I know last episode we got into a lot of transfers, but there's been about 4 or 5 that have committed since, including a big one on Friday night. So do you want to start there with Jamori Robinson, Keenan, and then just kind of work our way backwards?
Yeah, we probably should. It's not often that you add the American Athletic Defensive Player of the Year through the transfer portal when you're West Virginia, and they were able to do that. Robinson he had a ton of interest when he entered the portal, and I think he visited USC, but he limited things down to West Virginia and Virginia Tech. He had a monster year last year. It was his first year as a starter. He had played in his previous 2 seasons at UTSA, but he started 12 of 13 games last year. Yeah, I think it was 43 tackles, 17.5 tackles for loss, 10 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. He's a big edge rusher, 6'5", 255. Kind of that missing piece that West Virginia did not have on their defense. Both of their edge rushing pieces that had experience are gone in Tyron Bradley and Ty French. So he's going to step in there and obviously will play an immediate role. He has 1 year of eligibility left. So we'll look to make the most of that. And I think that West Virginia doesn't add guys like this very often, in terms of the transfer portal. And it's really exciting to see them kind of go in and be able to pull that off because He's good. He's a very good player. He graded out elite levels. And that's the thing, obviously you never know how guys are going to translate. There's no guarantee. But the one thing I've been impressed with overall for West Virginia, not everybody, I mean, you're going to add some guys that don't necessarily fit this criteria, but a lot of the guys they've added had elite, advanced metrics at their last location, and they were very productive. And that's really what you can bank on. You want guys that have been productive, have experience, and can step in and really handle their roles. So this is a big one. There were quite a few others. One that kind of slipped under the radar. Actually, Vernon broke this story. Jason Chambers, a defensive back from Appalachian State, kind of committed silently, never made it public, and just enrolled. He was very good last year as well at Appalachian State. He started 9 of 11 games, 38 tackles, 2 passes defended, an interception. He's a cornerback. Before that, though, he kind of made his hay at North Carolina Central. He was a first-team All-American in 2023. He had 41 tackles. I think it was 4 interceptions, a forced fumble. He was a finalist for the Aeneas Williams Award, which is given to the top HBCU defensive back. So very good player there that kind of just slipped under the radar. They added another quarterback because you can never have too many quarterbacks. Max Brown, he was at Charlotte last year, but actually started his career at Florida. He's from Oklahoma. Really good, productive high school career. Hasn't played a lot in college, but has played, and he has that dual threat ability that, Rich Rodriguez is kind of known for. Can really run the ball, also throw the ball. He didn't have the best numbers at Charlotte last year, but my understanding is that whole situation was a mess. And then finally, Tykees Crawford, a guy that if you're familiar with West Virginia recruiting, you'll remember. In 2020, West Virginia got involved with him late. Thought that maybe they might pull him. He actually ended up going to Charlotte. He was a 4-star guy from out of Texas, big offensive tackle. He's 6'5", 320 plus. He's played in 39 career games. He transferred to Arkansas actually after a season and has been there ever since. He has 9 career starts under his belt. So West Virginia needed offensive linemen. They still need offensive linemen when you lose really your top 6 guys in the rotation and some key guys that were probably going to play. So adding him is big just because it's another tackle body, and tackles are hard to come by. He was actually committed to UCLA, so that kind of shows you where he was at in the transfer market. Big Ten school had him, and West Virginia was able to get him on campus and flip him. So right now, West Virginia, I think it's 29 transfer portal additions and 1 junior college player right now. So 30 new additions, and then you take the 22 freshmen, I believe. And so that's like over half your team right now are going to be new players next year. And this isn't done. They're going to continue to add guys. They're continuing to recruit guys. Will Reed from Princeton, the offensive lineman, is still on the board. He's a guy that West Virginia hosted and they really like, and obviously would like to add him. I think he has 19 career starts, has gotten offers from quite a few schools, really one of the best offensive tackles that is available right now in the transfer portal. So we'll see what happens there. And there have been some other offers out, but this is going to continue. It's going to continue, Wes. We're going to keep doing this probably all the way through the summer until things get settled.
And I think it's important to remember, especially I know everyone's going to be like, oh, no, quarterback. Why are there so many quarterbacks? Guys are going to come. Guys are going to go. And just because they are here now does not mean that they will necessarily be here in August. And I think that's an important note that we have to kind of chime in every single time of, there is not a guarantee that all these guys will stick past spring ball. And I think it's important that this coaching staff brings in their options to try and figure out what they want, what fits them the best, what fits their players the best. And that just because there's a lot of guys here now doesn't mean that all of these guys will be there later.
Yeah, and I like that. I like their approach. They're getting guys that they're really trying to increase the competition level in really almost every room. There is no downside taking 2 quarterbacks to make Nico a better player. Maybe one of these guys emerges. Maybe they do win the job. But if they don't, it's at least going to push Nico to be a better player. You're much better when you have competition. Look at what they've done in the DB room. I mean, that's the thing that amazes me. They've got 9 guys, 9 transfer additions. Every single one of them have 1 year of eligibility remaining between the safety and cornerback. That's going to just increase competition, and guys are going to push themselves. They've added some really good players in those rooms. That's probably where I've been impressed with the most outside Robinson is what they've done in the DB rooms. Now, obviously, they've got to do it at the Power 4 level. Most of these guys are coming from, Group of 5 FCS, but again, as I mentioned, they've got really good metrics where they were at, really productive. So at worst, you're going to have a lot of competition.
Yeah. Anything else football front, or you want to wrap this up?
I think we're good. We're good. Let's enjoy the snow day.
Yeah, enjoy the snow. Be safe out there. Enjoy the warm weather. Enjoy the Washington Commanders in the NFC Championship. Sorry, I had to
Look
get
at
that
you,
in.
shamelessly plugging.
I had to plug it. Shout out Jaden Daniels. But no, if you made it this far, we appreciate you listening. Head over to our website. Head over to the Blue Lot. Get a subscription if you don't have it. It's a fun time, especially with the way the Hoops team is playing. So I'm Wesley Shoemaker, joined by the one and only Keenan Cummings. If you made it this far, we do appreciate you listening. And this was the WVSports.com podcast.